You've tried before, maybe more than once. You had the plan, the motivation, at least for a while. You were consistent for weeks, maybe even a few months. And then something happened. Life got busy, you had a bad week, you missed a few days, and somehow a few days turned into missing everything. You waited for Monday, for January, for the right moment. And then when that moment came, you started again with the same energy, the same hope, but the same results. Here's what I want to ask you, and I want you to sit with this. What if the plan wasn't the problem? What if it was never about willpower or discipline or the right plan? What if the real reason that you keep stopping has nothing to do with your body? Okay, tell me if this sounds familiar. You get motivated, usually after seeing something, like a picture of yourself or a comment that someone made, a moment when you just feel done with how things are. And that motivation feels real. In fact, it is real because it gets you started. You clean up your diet, you hit the gym, you feel good about yourself for the first time in a while. But underneath of all of that motivation, there's a voice in the back of your head. And that voice isn't saying, yes, I'm building something here. That voice says, I need to fix this. I need to fix myself. You see, that's the first crack. Because when you're trying to fix yourself, every little thing that goes wrong is failure. Every missed meal or missed session is proof that you can't do it. Every week that goes without visible progress is evidence of what you fear the most, that you're not enough. And obviously, when it gets hard, your voice gets louder and you stop. Not because you're lazy, but because the whole thing, this whole system just becomes exhausting. It's a loop. And a lot of people live in this loop for years. But I want to tell you something that no one talks about in terms of physical transformation. I don't know why. Your body is honest. It's brutally honest. It doesn't respond to how hard you want it. It responds to what's actually happening inside of you. The patterns that you run, the stories that you believe, the relationship that you have with yourself when no one is watching. I've worked with hundreds of men that were doing everything right on paper. They were training hard, eating clean, doing the whole lot, but they were forcing it. They were treating rest as laziness. Food was either punishment or reward. And the mirror was like a judge. And guess what the body was doing? It was reflecting that tension back at them in plateaus, injuries, in a constant feeling that no matter what they did, it was never enough. Because you see, physical behavior is almost like a symptom. The pattern that you have around food, where did that come from? The all or nothing thinking, where did that come from? The moment that you literally abandon yourself when life gets hard, where did that come from? These are not fitness problems, you see. They are patterns. And they were running long before you even set foot in the gym. I want to tell you how it all started for me. At the back of my recovery, in my late teens, I was super skinny. And as I started to gain a bit of weight, the only thing that I was really doing was running, believe it or not. But of course, I wanted more than that. I wanted to build my body. And of course, it wasn't about my health. It wasn't about my performance either. It was about feeling attractive. It was about feeling like a man, feeling enough. So the year after I moved to London in 2012, so 2013, I started taking it seriously. And you might know this or not, but the information at the time wasn't what it is now. I was figuring things out as I went, but I showed up and I was consistent. And slowly, of course, my body started to change. And then fast forward to 2017, I started competing in bodybuilding. So I was on stage. I had the physique. By any external measure, I had done it. But guess what? I still didn't feel it. That thing that I was chasing, that feeling of being enough, feeling like a man, finally being at peace with myself, it didn't come with the muscle. And the same discomfort, the same need was still there. It was just wearing a different body. So the real shift didn't happen in the gym. The gym was a great vehicle, was a great channel for me to have these realizations and to build more evidence, of course. But it all happened when I started combining the physical work with something deeper. The self-development, the inner work, all the stuff that I brag about all the time, actually looking at these patterns that I was carrying with me. That's when everything changed. Not because fitness wasn't a great vehicle, but because it's not about the vehicle, it's about the driver. And most people don't look at that. So what is actually going on when someone keeps failing at getting in shape? Through my years of experience and observation, working with hundreds of men, it almost always revolves around a few different things. The first is identity. The person doesn't actually see themselves as someone who lives that way. So every time they act it, it just feels fake. It all feels forced. So eventually they snap back into who they believe they are. So there is a profound need to transcend their current identity to be able to get to the other side and become who they want to be. The second one is unresolved emotions. Stress eating, training as punishment, using fitness as a way to numb out instead of tuning in. The body becomes like a dumping ground for everything that's been unresolved and unprocessed. The third third one is the all or nothing pattern. One bad meal becomes a bad day, which becomes a bad week, because at some point, somewhere along the way, they learned that imperfection means failure. So they would rather burn the whole thing down than sitting with imperfection. The fourth one is not keeping your word to yourself. This one doesn't even look like anything from the outside. Most people won't even notice it. But every time you say you will start Monday and then you don't, every time you set yourself a target and then you abandon it, you're sending yourself a clear message. And the message is, I cannot be trusted. And when you stop trusting yourself, every new attempt is starting with some sort of deficit. You're trying to build from a foundation that you've already learned to doubt. And the fifth one is victimhood. And look, I say this with zero judgment because I've seen it in myself too. I had to recognize it and work on it. This is the pattern of subconsciously outsourcing responsibility. The gym was too expensive, work is too busy, no one around me eats well, life is stressful and getting in the way. And all of those things can be true, but this is still a pattern because there will always be a reason. You will always find one. Because again, somewhere along the way, helplessness became a coping mechanism. And by the way, these are not character flaws. These are patterns. They are learned patterns. But just like you learn them, you can unlearn them. You just have to recognize them first. But here's what actually happens when you start operating at the level of the patterns instead of the actual symptoms. First and foremost, you stop white knuckling, not because the work gets easier, but because you're not fighting yourself anymore. You start making choices from a different place, not because you have to, but because you want to. It's not a punishment, it's an investment. At that point, the consistency becomes natural. It almost becomes easier to be disciplined. It works like magic because your actions are finally aligned with who you believe you are. And that's when the physical transformation finally accelerates. And it's not because it's a better program, but because the person doing the program finally changed. As we said, the body is always the last thing to change. The mind and the identity have to shift first. That's the real work. And honestly, it's crazy that no one talks about it. So if you've been in that loop, trying and stopping and trying and stopping, I want you to hear this. You're not broken. Genuinely, you're not lazy. You're not just someone who can't stick to things. You are someone that's been trying to solve the wrong problem. Because the question is not, how do I get fit? The question is, who do I need to become? Who do I want to become? Now, that's what this channel is about. This is what every video in this series is going to address. The patterns, the psychology, the identity work, all of the stuff that makes the physical transformation not only possible, but permanent. If it resonates with you, I wouldn't mind a new subscriber. And if you're watching this and thinking, I need someone to actually help me through this, there is a link in my caption. You can book a conversation with me, no pressure, just a conversation. But until then, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.